going to air it out. Down the field. Catch and the touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Kosko.
It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you, and we'll bring you up to 9 a.m. as we do every Saturday morning. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. We have a interesting week of college football now that the college football playoff rankings are out. Debut rankings are in, and now the controversy can start for the remainder of the month of November. And by the way, we are in November finally throughout the season as we enter week 10. And we thought we had a bonkers week last week, and at least on this show, we had a bad week last week. 1-4 in our 5 picks. Lone winner, lo and behold, was Notre Dame minus 3.5 over Carolina. Everything else, nope, no good. No good for us at all. So we're looking to bounce back this week, but we are going to start with the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday. And all I got to say is we knew what was going to happen, essentially. And if you don't know what I'm talking about Cincinnati. Cincinnati is number 2 in the AP Top 25. They're number 2 in the coaches poll. And they're number 6 in the college football playoff rankings. This is a 8-0 undefeated squad that does have a win, by the way, over Notre Dame. By the way, Notre Dame was ranked number 10 in the initial set of rankings. They are 7-1. That's their lone loss. But Cincinnati's behind teams like Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan State, Alabama, and Georgia. Now, on paper, that doesn't seem terrible, and it's probably where they were always going to end up. In fact, I thought earlier this week they were going to be the 6th or 7th best team in these rankings, just based on what I thought the committee was going to do with them. Now, I think they should have been in the top 4 over teams like Oregon and Ohio State. Ohio State has the loss to Oregon, so that gives Oregon the head-to-head, but Oregon also has a loss to Stanford. So to me, that cancels everything out, and you make them 5 and 6, and you throw Cincinnati at 4. I'm fine with Michigan State at 3 because they did beat Ohio State. They beat Michigan at home when Michigan was ranked above them in the AP poll. That's the best win out of all of those teams, and they are undefeated. They are playing a Big Ten schedule. I get that. That's fine. But then you have Georgia number 1, which was obvious, and Alabama, despite their loss to Texas A&M, is number 2 because they've dominated pretty much everybody else, and they're basically on a collision course with Georgia come the SEC championship game. Now, does Bama totally deserve to be number 2? I mean, if you're going to go by the logic of the eye test, then yes. If you take the eye test, strength of schedule, and other factors into consideration, I don't think I necessarily would have put Alabama number 2, but I don't hate it. I'm fine with it. The biggest thing is, though, it's Cincinnati. The fact that they are at 6. And the fact that they are at 6 means they need a lot of things to happen for the remainder of the season if they actually are going to become the first Group of 5 school to ever make the playoff. And the problem is, folks, I don't think it's going to happen. Because what do you do with the teams behind them? The teams behind them could jump them. Even if Cincinnati goes 13-0. Cincinnati has to play their best remaining opponents are SMU and Houston, and they are ranked, by the way, in the AP poll. They're not ranked in the college football playoff rankings. Houston is number 20. They're 7-1. SMU, who just lost, they dropped to number 23 in the AP poll, and SMU lost to Houston. Good game. Great game for the American Athletic Conference. Boy, what a shame Cincinnati is leaving for the Big 12 in a couple of years, right? So, I mean, that was good. That was a good game for their own conference. But Cincinnati, they still have to play both of them, which is good. I take that back. They only have to play SMU on the schedule. But if you look at the conference standings, there's no divisions, so they just take the top 2. Right now, Houston's 5-0 in the conference. Cincinnati's 4-0, so it would be a Cincinnati-Houston matchup. So essentially, they could play both of them If they went out, Houston wins out. That's a pretty darn good game. And I would imagine Houston would be eventually put into the CFP rankings, between 21 and 25 if they are 11 and 1 at the end of the year. So yeah, then Cincinnati would have beaten SMU, which I don't know if they're ever going to get to the CFP rankings now. I mean, they could win another game or two before they play Cincinnati. So maybe you have a 10-0 Cincinnati team against a 9-1 SMU team, and that's, let's say number 6 Cincinnati against number 25 SMU, and Houston's hanging around at number 22 or something along those lines. Yeah, they'll have ranked wins, but it's not going to be enough. They can go 13-0 and beat SMU and Houston. And you know what it's going to do, folks? It's going to push them to number 5. Because here's the problem. Cincinnati needs Alabama to lose. They need the Big Ten to beat each other up. And they might need Oregon to lose another game. I can tell you what's going to happen right now. Georgia, if they win out, of course, they'll be number 1. They'll be 13-0. Now, if they win out, that's assuming they beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. And right now, I'm assuming Bama gets there. Bama has 2 losses. No 2-loss team has ever made it. They're out. Fine. All right, so we'll knock Bama out for a second. Michigan State, the Michigan State factor right now. They still have to play Penn State and Ohio State. They beat Michigan. They have head-to-head. Ohio State has 1 loss. Penn State is out of it in terms of the playoff. They actually weren't even ranked in the top 25 for the CFP. They're number 22 in the AP polls. They're 5-3. They already have 3 losses, folks. They had that bad loss to Illinois. But they could stumble. But obviously, if they went out and they're 12-0, they're going to be in the Big Ten title game. Now, if they lose that Big Ten title game, it depends on who they lose to. I mean, Iowa already has 2 losses, so the Big Ten could play itself out. If the only way they're going to get a team in now at this point is if it's Michigan State, Ohio State, or if Michigan actually does. Michigan can win out. And if Michigan State does drop 2 games, Michigan, despite a loss to Michigan State, if they are 12-1 and win the Big Ten, they're going to have an argument to get in because they would have beaten Ohio State and Penn State, even though Penn State's having a slightly down year compared to the other 2. So they have to worry about that. And Michigan's behind Cincinnati. Oregon, if they're 12-1, they're going to be in as the Pac-12 champ. Ohio State, obviously, 12-1, if they went out, they're going to get in. Even with Oregon ahead of them. Because if Ohio State wins out, they're going to knock out Michigan State. But I'll tell you this right now. Michigan State could be 11-1, their lone loss being to Ohio State, and they would still be ahead of Cincinnati. Because their resume says, we had a great schedule. Our only loss was to the Big Ten champ, who's going to be the 3 or 4 seed, if not the 2 seed, in the college football playoff. So they even have an argument to get in as a second Big Ten team. Oh yeah, I forgot about Oklahoma and Wake Forest. See, there's too many factors. Them being at 6 just screwed them for the remainder of the weeks. They need so many things to happen now each and every week just to have a hope that they're going to move up 1 spot next Tuesday. Oklahoma's undefeated. And they're number 8. Granted, they haven't played well, but they are undefeated. And if they do win the Big 12, don't forget, Oklahoma State, 1 loss to Oklahoma State, and 1 loss to Baylor. They're 11-12. Oklahoma wins out, man. They have to play both of them. They play Baylor today, actually. Or sorry, next week. This is Oklahoma's bye week. Because they are actually 9-0. They play Baylor next week on the road. Host Iowa State, and then they're at Oklahoma State. You mean to tell me if Oklahoma doesn't win out, or if they win out, they're not going to be in the top 4 or close to it or knocking on the door? They will be. It's an undefeated Big 12 school. They'll get it. Wake Forest is interesting. Now, I don't think they're going to go 13-0, but they're 8-0 right now. Tops in the ACC. They're at North Carolina today. They host NC State. Tough games. Then they're at Clemson, at Boston College. But if they went out, they're 12-0. They say they beat Pitt or Virginia in the ACC title game. They're 13-0. You have to say Wake Forest has a better chance than Cincinnati. If not, they will get in. They're number 9 right now. The deck is just stacked against the Bearcats. And that brings me to my next point, which is expansion. Some people don't want expansion. Some people do want expansion. The committee has met over expansion. It seemed like a done deal that it was going to be 12 teams. They were at least going to approve 12 teams earlier this summer, and then enact that in a couple years down the line, which is fine. You have to straighten out TV and location logistics, and you have to basically restructure the postseason. That's fine, but expansion was coming. Now they're meeting, and they can't decide if they're going to go to 8 to 12, if they even expand at this point. But you have to expand. Even at the very least, if you go to 8 teams, look at that playoff this year. At 8 teams. Georgia versus Oklahoma, Bama versus Michigan, Michigan State versus Cincinnati, Oregon versus Ohio State. You get a rematch, by the way, the 4 versus 5 matchup. But wouldn't you love to see that? Then you open it up. The only Power 5 team to not be, or the only Power 5 conference to not be represented in the top 8 would be the ACC, just because Wake Forest is at number 9, and the ACC is having a very down year. But even if you went to 12, you get the ACC in, you get an independent in Notre Dame at number 10, and then you throw in 2 extra Big 12 teams in Oklahoma State and Baylor. And we know how it works, folks. Top 4 get a bye. You're fine with that. But, Cincinnati gets their opportunity. 6 versus 12, they'll take on Baylor. Winner goes to Michigan State. It's simple here. You make the 12. Then you get down to 8 teams, then 4, then 2, then you're champion. It's not that hard to do this. You want to open it up, you have to open it up. Get the 12 teams. And I'm not saying this just because Cincinnati is not going to make it. If they go 13-0, they're going to have a shot, but in the end, I don't think they're going to make it based on how these other teams are playing. And that's a travesty because they had the preseason hype. They have a tremendous road victory at Notre Dame. On paper, again, I get the eye test. Would I have them beating Ohio State? No. Would I have them beating Oregon? Oregon, I don't know. Oregon, they could beat. You beat Notre Dame on the road, and Notre Dame is a good football team this year. In the committee's eyes, they're a top 10 team. So you mean to tell me if they can go on the road and beat Notre Dame, that they can't do it to Ohio State or Oregon or Michigan State? Now, Bama and Georgia are 2 exceptions. They're not going to beat them. But you mean to tell me out of the three teams ahead of them, they can't beat one of them? I'd put my money on Cincinnati to beat Michigan State, maybe Oregon. I don't know about Ohio State. They're obviously ahead of teams that the committee said they could beat. Could they go on the road and beat Michigan? Yeah. Oklahoma? Yeah. Wake Forest? Yes. Already did to Notre Dame. So in the committee's eyes, this is the right spot. And again, this is where I thought they were going to end up. The problem is their resume is weaker, but I would say aside from the committee, if you were watching college football this year, based on their 8-0 record, the win over Notre Dame, I know Indiana stinks this year, but they did beat Indiana earlier this year, another Power 5 team. They're running through their conference. And if Cincinnati does beat SMU and Houston, obviously SMU in the regular season, then Houston in the conference championship game, they're 13-0. You mean to tell me that the world wouldn't put them in at least in the number 4 spot? They should be. The committee's not going to do it. But everybody, most of the college football media, the fans, players, and coaches, yeah, they would put Cincinnati in there. The Group of Five title is a death sentence for them because this is as high as they're going to go. Maybe number 5, but unless they have a bunch of things happen, they are screwed. They will not get into the top 4. Because Georgia's going to keep winning, and here's something that's even worse. Say Alabama plays Georgia in the SEC championship game, and Alabama wins. They're both going to get in. Georgia being 1 all year, they lose to the number 2 team. They're both getting in. Just put Alabama at 1, at a 12-1 record. Georgia's going to drop to 2 or 3. You'll have your Big Ten champion there. Because right now on paper, it's going to be Ohio State or Michigan State. And they're either going to be a 13-0 champ or a 12-1 champ. They're getting in. That's 3 spots right there. Now the loser's out. Michigan State would still have an argument. Don't get me wrong. Say that, like I said before, if their only loss is to Ohio State. But here's the worst case scenario for Cincinnati, where everything's closed off. Bama beats Georgia. They're both in. Ohio State wins the Big Ten at 12-1. Michigan State is 11-1. Only lost to Ohio State. Ohio State's getting in. Michigan State then has to battle it out with Oregon if they go 12-1. Now, if Oregon wins the Pac-12 at 12-1, they'll knock out Michigan State. If Oregon loses, even with a Pac-12 championship at 2 losses, they might still be over Cincinnati. But with that last spot remaining, Cincinnati has to fight it over with potentially a 12-1 or a 13-0 Oklahoma Big 12 champion, or a 1-loss Big 12 champ out of Oklahoma State or Baylor. They're going to get more consideration. Wake Forest, if they're 12-1, 13-0, they're going to get more consideration. So you see, even in that scenario right there that I just laid out, where Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State take over the top 3 spots based on a hypothetical projection right there, that 4th spot is going to be battled between by 5 or 6 teams if they all went out. This is if they all went out, which, I mean, you know some of them are. But even with a 13-0 record, Cincinnati could very well fall 2 or 3 spots. They can keep winning and keep falling. And I also want to give credit where credit's due. Good buddy Josh Pate over at 24/7 Sports, host of Late Kick. I heard him bring this up. I believe he's the one who brought this up. Auburn's not out of it. Yeah, Auburn not out of it. Now Texas A&M and Ole Miss, as 2 lost teams, are out of it because they both lost to Alabama. But how about Auburn? What if Auburn wins out? Now, Alabama has the lone loss to Texas A&M. So here's where Auburn can pass Alabama. Now, they lost to Georgia, lost to Penn State. So they have 1 conference loss, Auburn. All they have to do is win out. And guess what? Auburn takes the SEC West title. Now, when you beat on paper, when you beat number 14 Texas A&M, you beat number 17 Mississippi State. And yes, Mississippi State with 3 losses is in the rankings in the top 20. And then you beat number 2 Alabama. You mean to tell me you're not going to be a top 6 team? At the very least, they're going to be a top 8 team if they're going to go from 13 into the top 8 if they win out and they're 10-2. And I would not rule out them being 9-2 going into the final game, and Bama is 10-1. And you have number 2 Alabama against, let's say number 9, number 8 Auburn, because they will move up with those quality of wins. Again, their only loss was on the road to Penn State, which not a CFP ranked team, but they're respected because it was a Big Ten loss. And of course, the other loss was to Georgia, the number 1 team in the country. What are you going to do about that? So you mean to tell me Auburn's out of it yet? And I'm glad they brought this up. They're not out of it. They went out and they go to the SEC title game and play Georgia. 12-0 Georgia, 10-2 Auburn. You know what the country's going to root for? Aside from the Georgia fans, they're going to root for Auburn. And of course the Alabama fans. They're going to root for Auburn. They will root for Auburn. Total chaos. You want to talk about the first 2-loss team to get in? Auburn has a path. You went out and you beat Georgia in the title game. You're 11-2. You knock off the number 1 team. You're going to be at least the 3 seed. And you know what? Georgia might still get in. Their low loss is in the title game to the SEC champion. Auburn 3, Georgia 4. Throw the Big Ten champ and someone else at 1 and 2, or however it's going to end up shaking out. But then again, at that point, if you have a 2-loss Auburn team, then you might have a better argument for Cincinnati to actually get in at 13-0. You might. But again, Oklahoma, Wake Forest, still hanging out in the Big 12 and ACC. Oregon still out in the Pac-12. But you're going to get 2. There are a lot of scenarios where you get 2 SEC teams in. Now, a 2-loss Bama team does not get in in my mind, actually. If they lose to Georgia in the title game, I don't think they get in. They're going to have a big argument to get in because they're only losses. But again, their loss will be to Georgia, but they also lost to Texas A&M, and they're not going to make it. Bama's going to have an argument, but they won't get in with 2 losses. Auburn could get in with 2 losses because the committee respects Bama right now, and I don't think they're going to move from the number 2 spot unless Georgia gets upset. They're not going to move from that 2 spot prior to the Iron Bowl against Auburn. So the madness is starting to ensue. The first rankings caused a lot of buzz, a lot of controversy, and of course everyone's freaking out about Cincinnati, including me. But ultimately, Cincinnati is screwed moving forward. There's just too many scenarios where they're going to be kept out, and it's a shame. Again, a lot of things have to happen. Could all those things happen? Yes, because this college football season has been absolutely bonkers where you see upsets every week. So yes, I could see it happening. But now it's less and less likely. They had to be they had to be in the top 4 in the initial rankings to get at least that respect. Then the pressure would have been on them to say, all right, you're number 4. If you keep winning, you win out. You win your last 5 games, plus which includes your conference title game. Then yeah, you'll probably be in number 4, number 3 as a group of 5 school. And yet, if they went out, they could end up dropping anyway. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we'll start diving into this week. Since we got the playoff madness out of the way, we'll start diving into this week's games. And, of course, later in the show, I'll give you my 5 picks, 29-16 on the season. 1-4 week last week. So we were sitting pretty at 28-12. And then, woof, we had a rough Saturday last week to end October. But hopefully we start November off with a bang. And so we'll keep it locked here. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Thank you on College Football Pick'em, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu as always. Let's see what we got here this weekend. Week 10, some interesting matchups. Of course, got our 5 picks coming up later in the show. It's a weird week. We had some rivalries last week. We're also now 3 weeks away from rivalry weekend, which throws everything for a loop. I mentioned the Iron Bowl. I mentioned you look at the game, Ohio State, Michigan. Obviously, Rutgers, Maryland, whoever Rutgers is playing. Of course, I'm just kidding. But Rutgers has to play Maryland or Penn State at the end of the year. It's Maryland this year, that's who the rivalry should be in the Big Ten. They came at the same time. They're right next to each other. They don't really have a rivalry with Penn State at this point. So yeah, just make it Maryland. Of course, these are the jokes, folks. Don't worry, these are the jokes. Speaking of Rutgers, by the way, they do have to play Wisconsin. I do actually want to talk about that game real quick. Wisconsin's a 13-point favorite on the road right now. 3:30 game today in Piscataway. Interesting, though, because Wisconsin, who I've been highly, highly critical of the entire year, because they have been the exact opposite of what I thought they were going to be, but they have low-key turned it around. This team is 1-3. They are 5-3 now. They've won 4 in a row. This includes they've shut out Illinois. They edged Army. But they have dominated the last 2 games, which was at Purdue, and they hosted Iowa, which, let me down again. Football-wise, let me down again. Number 2 in the AP poll at one point, they have lost 2 bad games in a row. After beating Penn State, that was the highlight of their season. And they've lost 2 bad games in a row. And you mean to tell me in Madison you were 7-point dogs? Did we have that last week? We did. Not 7 point. They were 3.5-point dogs in Madison last week, and they lost 27-7. We had that game last week. We took Iowa. When I say we, I mean the royal we, which I mean me. Terrible job out of me. And guess what? Graham Mertz still stinks. Even in a game like that, Graham Mertz, who I hyped up all offseason, who I thought was going to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten, or at least one of them, he was 11 of 22 for 104 yards and a touchdown. I mean, heck, Rutgers quarterback Noah Vedral is playing better than that. Mertz has been a shell of himself. Again, he had one. I say that, but he's had one great game. He had one good game against Illinois last year. He got COVID. The team got COVID, out for 3 weeks. Comes back, not the same. I'm not saying there's a direct correlation, but he had one great game last year. He has not been good at all this year. And even last week, Wisconsin's run game, which is pretty good, with Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi, they have not missed Jalen Berger, by the way, who is out of the program now. He's a Jersey boy, so maybe he comes home to the Scarlet Knights. But in any event, Allen ran for 104 yards. Malusi only ran for 48. The team combined for 166 yards on the ground, and they still controlled this game because the Iowa passing game was no good. Spencer Petras could not throw the football, 9 of 19. Alex Padilla came in, 3 of 6, but they couldn't get their run game going. If you hold Wisconsin at 27 points, if you're Iowa, you should be able to edge them out 28-27 or maybe put up 30 because you have that good of a run game. Tyler Goodson, man, 27 yards off 13 carries. He was averaging 2.1 yards a carry. Tyler Goodson, who's pretty darn good, no pun intended. But even with that performance out of Wisconsin, they still managed to put up 27 points and beat him by 3 scores. And this game this week, Greg Schiano called Wisconsin the hottest team in the Big Ten. I find this game interesting just because Rutgers is a 2-touchdown dog at home. And now, this is not one of the games I'm picking this week, but it is very intriguing to look at, I will say. Now, of course, if you are in New Jersey, which most of you probably are, you can't bet this game. It's just because they voted on that on election day where you can actually finally expand the sports betting again in New Jersey to include New Jersey universities. And guess what? I think it was like 60 to 40% in favor of no, which blows my mind. I have no idea why. Why wouldn't you want to bet on Rutgers football? Because some of these weeks where these lines are huge, but they're going to get killed by 40 points by Ohio State. Wouldn't you want to put the house on Ohio State? I mean, come on. But you still can't do that. But in any event, if you're outside, if you go to Pennsylvania or you go to New York and you want to place a bet on the Scarlet Knights, it wouldn't be the worst idea. Now, I do think this game is going to be close. Are they going to win out? I don't think so. Or win this game outright, I should say. I don't think so. Just because Rutgers never plays this team well, just like Ohio State. They don't play Ohio State well. They don't play Wisconsin well since they've joined the conference. Again, it's at home. It's a 3:30 game. You should get a better crowd for the Scarlet Knights. Again, they're 4-4, so the crowds have been good and this year. For example, I was at the Michigan State game last month for homecoming. It ended up being a decent crowd, but it was a far cry from what I thought it was going to be against a ranked team. I mean, heck, the Temple game, week 1 on a Thursday night, was sold out. Then the storm hit. They moved it to Saturday. Then you have half the stadium full. Which, that's just due to the storm, of course. But again, they sold out the Temple game for a Thursday night contest. I think they would have a decent crowd against a Big Ten opponent. Now, if they pull off this upset, they're certainly going to come in waves for the final home games for the remainder of the year, of course, because they're going to be in bowl contention. But this means a lot. This means a lot for the Scarlet Knights. They only have 2 home games left. It's this one and then the season ender against Maryland, because they have to go at Indiana and at Penn State over the next 2 weeks. But they scored the upset. I shouldn't say upset win. They scored the road win over Illinois last week. Rutgers did. So put them at 4-4, 500. They finally have that Big Ten win. And if they pull this game off, Wisconsin's number 21. I'm not saying Rutgers is going to be in the top 25 now with 4 losses, because that's just not going to happen. But they're going to be like, whoa, we just knocked off a ranked team coming into our house, Wisconsin. They're not going to win, but if you want to take a flyer, I would consider the Scarlet Knights. How about this total, by the way? 37.5. Oh, boy. Vegas expects a very, very sloppy game. And by the way, because Graham Mertz, and again, this could very well be the week where he just goes off, because that would be typical Rutgers. But if he keeps doing what he's been doing this year, which is play very below average, Rutgers could turn that team into very one-dimensional. Now, Rutgers' rush defense is not the best, but if Wisconsin only has to run the football, at some point, if you're at, it's not like you're playing Kenneth Walker here. Don't forget, Rutgers did relatively shut down Michigan's run offense in Ann Arbor last month. So they're capable of containing Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen. They're capable. So that's why I would keep an eye on this game for your 3:30 window. Maybe Rutgers plus 13. The total's at 37.5. So they're thinking maybe a 24-10 type of game in favor of Wisconsin. I'd be inclined to take the over in this one. It's a very low number. So the Vegas is begging you to take the over, but I think I would. Because in the end, I expect maybe a 27-17 type of game. Even a 27-14 game in favor of Wisconsin. So you're playing with fire there with the line at minus 13 for Wisconsin. If you're going to take the Badgers, or if you're taking Rutgers at plus 13 at home, you're playing with fire there. If it's 27-14 or if it's 27-17, then you're in good shape. But either way, that hits the over. I would think there's going to be at least 40 combined points in this game. This game could be very sloppy, but I think it's going to go just over on that total, and Rutgers will have a chance to cover. I do think that. So keep an eye on that one. If you like old school Big Ten football where the game actually is going to look sloppier than it actually should, and you can look at Wisconsin and Rutgers. That is an interesting one. A couple other lines I'm going down the list here within the top 25. Wow, Georgia is minus 39 at this point at home. Oh my goodness gracious! They're playing Missouri, by the way. They're not playing Akron or something. They're playing Missouri, a division foe. Now Missouri's 4-4. They're meh. They actually have they have the leaders, by the way, in this matchup in terms of the passing leaders and rushing leaders. Connor Bazelak from from Missouri, 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, and rushing-wise, Tyler Beatty, he's approaching 1,000 yards. He's got 11 touchdowns. That's better than what Georgia has right now, at least on paper. But we know Georgia's going to win this game handily. I don't know about 39. That's a, as Rich Quinones would say, that's a look but don't touch game. I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole. That huge of a line. Now the over, 59. Hit the over, 59.5. Total is interesting, but is Missouri going to put up that many points? Is my question. I can see Georgia winning this game 45-10, and that would hit the under. Do not touch that though. 39 points. It's an SEC game. Now Georgia could very well win this one by 40 plus points. That's fine, but 39. That's just so big. Ohio State, Nebraska, we'll get into in the next segment. That line actually shifted slightly in favor of Nebraska, so we know where the money's going right now. It's a small shift. Wake Forest, North Carolina. Let's stop here and let's talk about this one real quick as I'm going down the line. As I had this, I mentioned Wake Forest in the opening segment in terms of the college football playoff rankings. They're number 9 right now, 8-0. The ACC is just that weak this year where they have to go 13-0, like a team like Cincinnati, in order to get that respect or to get that consideration for the playoff. Because Wake Forest, this is their highest ranking in program history. I'm pretty sure, actually. And they are still dogs on the road here against North Carolina. So it just goes to show you what Vegas thinks of them right now. They're not sold. They're not totally sold on Wake Forest keeping this going. Now, they have a quarterback in Sam Hartman who is playing his rear end off. Nearly 2,500 yards. He's got 22 touchdowns. He can run the ball a little bit as well. Now, if they go into Chapel Hill and beat this team, again, North Carolina was one of those preseason teams that, guys like me hyped up as the other contender in the ACC along with Clemson. And both those teams are barely 500 right now. They could still win this game. Sam Howell has improved after his slow start. They still have Ty Chandler in the backfield. Still have Josh Downs at wide receiver. North Carolina's got some talent, man. Mac Brown's not letting this team slip away. They're probably going to get to a bowl game. They'll finish 6-6 or 7-5. They're not going anywhere. They're not going away. They'll be in the postseason. It's going to be a very disappointing year for them, but they're not going away. But Vegas thinks just because it's in Chapel Hill and Wake Forest is, they're at the highest of highs right now. That emotional high is going to affect them. Because over the last couple of weeks, they've dominated Duke, who stinks. They needed 70 points, by the way, to beat Army. Wild game on the road up at West Point. They just edged out Syracuse. Now in Syracuse's defense, they've improved throughout the year, but they're not a world beater. They edged out Louisville. Okay. They did dominate Virginia. Virginia's looking pretty good, and that could be an ACC title game rematch. They beat Florida State. Florida State stinks. They beat them by 21. But in their first two games, they beat Old Dominion and Norfolk State. I mean, come on. So the impressive win hasn't happened yet. That happens over the next 4 weeks. This is the meat. This is the meat and potatoes of their schedule now. These last 4 games. Wake Forest has done this for 8 weeks and has been able to build themselves up as a top 10 team, a legit contender at this point. Now can they keep it going? Because now they have to play North Carolina, which is a cross-divisional matchup, but they have NC State and Clemson and Boston College to end the year. Those are all 3 divisional games. Now, Boston College is 4-4, and they're 0-4 in the ACC, so they've taken a step back a little bit from where people thought they were going to be this year. I thought they were going to be better, but they have, quietly under the radar fallen back a little bit. But again, Clemson, despite being 5-3, they're 4-2 in the conference. They can still be dangerous. They're not any good right now, but hey, it's still Clemson. You got to give them a little respect. Dabo Swinney's not going to throw in the towel just because they have 3 losses and they're not going to make the playoff. Or, even win the division this year. Because NC State has the tiebreaker over them. So really it's going to come down to Wake Forest and NC State for the Atlantic Division in the ACC. That game's in 2 weeks. That's next week. It's 2 games from now, if you count today. But the fact that they're 2.5-point dogs on the road, I want to jump on the Wake Forest bandwagon. I want to buy stock in Wake Forest, even though the price is very high right now. So that, just, by the way, don't take investing advice from me, because I'm saying, oh yeah, buy stock in Wake Forest right now when they're at the peak right now. Now, if they win the next 2 games, the quote unquote stock price in them is going to go way up. Then you have to worry about them beating Clemson and Boston College as a 10-0 team later this year. But the stock is way high on Wake Forest. I could have told you to buy stock in them, 4 weeks ago. I would look like a genius right now. Tough game. It really is. -2.5 in favor of North Carolina. I'd say take a flyer on Wake Forest to win this game outright. I do think they are going to win this game outright. But again, it was a game that I stayed away from a betting perspective, just because, again, I want to pick Wake Forest. But the fact that Vegas is saying, yeah, we're going to keep North Carolina a favorite, despite the fact they have half as many wins. They've been very up and down this year. I know it's in Chapel Hill, but they've been very up and down. It's a top 10 team, conference opponent coming to town, but they're going to still be a favorite over Wake Forest. Yeah, look, but don't touch. Total is 76.5, so they expect points. Sam Hartman versus Sam Howell. That's one of your best quarterback matchups this year. Who would have thought that, by the way? And not that I didn't like Sam Hartman. QB1 Beyond the Lights legend. But I thought Sam Howell would have been running away with the Heisman at this point. He's not. Sam Hartman should be getting more Heisman love than he is right now. What else we got? We have Liberty, Ole Miss. We're going to talk about that in the final segment of the show. Illinois, how about Minnesota, by the way? They just gave P.J. Fleck a 7-year contract extension. They're 14.5 points. 14.5-point favorite at home. Total only 44. They just lost another running back, by the way, Bryce Williams. That's now 3 on the year they've lost for the season. So, but they keep churning them out. I don't know how, but Minnesota controls their own destiny for the Big Ten West, which is unbelievable. Considering, again, this team lost to Bowling Green. You don't do that. And then number 20 all of a sudden again. So look at that. Go figure. Pittsburgh back in the top 25. They're at Duke. 21-point favorites on the road. How about this line? Purdue is respectable. They were ranked at one point. They host Michigan State at 3:30 today. Michigan State is only a 3-point favorite on the road. Now, this could be the trap game. telling you, well, if Michigan State is for real, their loss is going to come to Ohio State. I think Ohio State's the best team anyway, but they're not going to lose this game. But this could be the trap game. If there's a game where they're going to drop coming off that emotional high after Michigan, it's going to be this one. Because Purdue's a sneaky team. They are a sneaky team. Tulsa at Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a 22.5-point favorite. Total only at 55. Cincinnati could do that by themselves, maybe. Navy at Notre Dame. Now, Navy gave Cincinnati a bunch of problems the other week. Notre Dame did lose to Cincinnati, so there's your little common opponent right there. Notre Dame, a 3-touchdown favorite at home. Again, look, don't touch. Some of these big lines I will take, but that one's just weird. I know it's in South Bend, but Navy's weird even at 2-6. I don't like it. Don't like it. Oklahoma State, only 3.5-point favorite on the road against West Virginia. That's an interesting game. I might consider Oklahoma State there. Again, not one of our games, but Oklahoma State might be the move there. Baylor Tcu, very intriguing because TCU just fired Gary Patterson. Jerry Kill's the interim head coach, so you never know. Usually teams play up after their coach is fired, but they're 6.5-point dogs at home. Baylor looking great right now under Dave Aranda in year number 2. They still have a shot for the Big 12 title at 7-1, but they're nearly a touchdown favorite on the road. Again, that's a look but don't touch game for me. Auburn, Texas A&M we'll get into in the next segment. What else do we got? Mississippi State, Arkansas. Remember Arkansas was everyone's darling at one point? And if you've been listening to me, I can't stand Mississippi State right now. But hey, they're proving me wrong at the moment. I'll tell you what, if Arkansas wins this game, they might be back in the top 25. Boy, it feels like a lifetime ago when they were, top 10 team, wherever they were, top 12, and they were running all over the place. Wow, Arkansas is for real this year. And they're 1-3 in the conference. Unbelievable. NC State, Florida State. NC State's a 2.5-point favorite on the road. Arkansas was a 4.5-point favorite at home. Alabama, 28.5-point favorite over LSU at home. Tennessee, 1-point favorite on the road over Kentucky. Wow. That's interesting. Very interesting. Iowa, 12-point favorite on the road against Northwestern. Fresno State, we'll get into that momentarily. Oregon, 7-point favorite over Washington on the road. Indiana, 20-point dog on the road against Michigan. And wrap up our top 25. Looks like we got San Diego State, -7 on the road at Hawaii. So that'll wrap up the look ahead to this week, to today's contests. And we're going to step aside and take a quick break. And when we come back, Week 10, 5-pack of picks, 29-16 on the year. Let's start November off with a bang. Keep it locked here. It's College Football Pick'em, right on AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Final segment of the show right here on College Football Pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you, taking up to 9 a.m. Of course, we are always presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attilas Gym in Egg Harbor Township. All right. 5-pack of picks. Here we go. A little rapid fire to end the show today. Now, we'll see what these mean for the college football playoff rankings come in a couple days on Tuesday. And, of course, when we come back next week, we'll discuss all the craziness that happened after this Saturday and see if there's any major changes, of course, i.e. Cincinnati, if they actually move up or move down despite a win. All right, we'll see how that goes. All right, in any event, here we go. Ohio State at Nebraska. This line did shift as I teased in the last segment. This moved from -15 for Ohio State to -14.5. So, Nebraska might. People like that for Nebraska. People like Nebraska right now. So we're at 14.5. But, folks, we're still going to take Ohio State. I just don't think this is going to be competitive. Maybe at first, but you gotta love Adrian Martinez. He's doing whatever he can for the Cornhuskers, but the problem is the team around him stinks. They're 1-5 in the Big Ten, 3-6 overall. Don't forget they still lost to Illinois. Scott Frost, he needs to win 3 games in a row to be bowl eligible. And boy, I mean, he is. I don't know how his seat is not flaming hot right now. Because they could very well lose 2 of the next 3 games and be 4-8. It's terrible. This guy has not gotten it done. Ohio State, they're coming off a very tough game against Penn State at home, closer than expected, but again, Penn State always plays them well. So the way I look at it is Ohio State looking for a bounce-back game in terms of just dominating an opponent. They're going to do it this week. 2 touchdowns on the road, that's fine with me. I'll take it. Total is at 66. Ohio State might do that nearly themselves. They'll probably put up 40-plus points in this game, but we'll take Ohio State minus 14.5 to open things up for our 5-pack of picks. Next game is Liberty at Ole Miss. And no, not the commercial, Liberty University here, plus 9.5 on the road, and that's where we are leaning here. Now, Ole Miss, very good team. I like them. Love Matt Corral at quarterback. I'm a big fan of Lane Kiffin. How could you not be? The problem is, I think Ole Miss is still going to win, but Liberty, pretty good. They are a pretty good football team, and I like Malik Willis, who is a big-time dual-threat quarterback. Now, he's one of the better passers in the country, top 10 in yards and touchdowns. But he's also the leading rusher out of all players in this matchup. Nearly 700 yards. He's got 9 touchdowns on the ground. So the guy can do it all. Now, again, if Ole Miss shuts him down, Liberty is not going to have a prayer in this game. I don't think they're going to win outright, but that's a big number even on the road. And for a team with Liberty's talent, Hugh Freeze has done a great job. And the fact that Malik Willis is playing at it seems like a higher level this year than he did last year. You know what? I'm going to take a flyer here. We'll take Liberty plus 9.5. Their 2 losses came to Syracuse on the road, and they lost to Louisiana Monroe on the road. So again, these are not the highest of quality of losses, i.e. like Ole Miss losing to Alabama, for instance. But they are a competitive football team, and this will be a huge win for them. They do take on the Louisiana Raging Cajuns in 2 weeks, and then they host Army on the 27th as well. So there's a path there for Liberty to go 10-2, if not 9-3 this season. Tough game today at noon, but for some reason they seem to always play up for these types of games, and I think they're going to keep this one close. So Liberty plus 9.5. Auburn, Texas A&M, mentioned it last segment. Huge matchup in the SEC. That's your 3:30 game on CBS. Texas A&M is a 4.5-point favorite at home, but as I told Rich earlier this week, for some reason I always go against Auburn and Bo Nix. No more. I am going to get on the Bo Nix train here, get on the Bo Nix bandwagon, and I hope it does not crash as we go down this track here. All right, I hope this is not a epic train derailment here. So I'll roll with Bo Nix. Zach Calzada has filled in quite nicely as of late for Haynes King at quarterback for Texas A&M. A&M's turned it around since that upset win over Alabama. They're at home at Kyle Field, tough place to play. But as I mentioned before, Auburn is one of those teams where they actually have a path to the playoff with just 2 losses, and they seem to be getting hot at the right time. So let's go with Auburn here. Don't let me down. Plus 4.5 on the road. Now, if they lose by 2, do I care? No. Won the bet. That's fine. But Auburn plus 4.5 on the road at Texas A&M. All right, NC State at Florida State. We'll get into that one. All right, I teased that one as well from the previous segment. NC State only a 2.5-point favorite on the road at the Seminoles. Seminoles have been mostly a mess this year. They've been so inconsistent and a very frustrating team to watch. NC State, led by Devin Leary, one of the better passers in the country, local Jersey boy as well. I like the Wolfpack. They're going to be a contender with Wake Forest for that division, so that'll be an exciting race for them. But they both have to get by this week, and then we'll look forward to that matchup next Saturday as well. So give me NC State right now minus 2.5. It's small enough where it's basically a pick 'em for me. So I will be confident in taking the Wolfpack on the road here at Florida State. That game, 4 o'clock today, kickoff on this chilly Saturday here to open up November. All right, final game, we have Boise State and Fresno State. That's at 7 o'clock later today. It's at Fresno State. Now, the Bulldogs looking pretty good, 7-2. Don't forget, they did upset UCLA when UCLA was everyone's darling back in September, which included me. They're only a 5-point favorite at home, so it's not astronomical. Boise State up and down this year, 4-4. Obviously feeling the loss of Brian Harsin. Andy Avalos, though, solid head coach coming over from the Oregon defensive coordinator. Solid head coach. It's going to take another year or two to get that team back into regular contention with the Mountain West, but they're kind of always in it anyway. So solid program, but for Fresno State has something rolling this year. Jake Hayner, I'm rolling with him at quarterback. He has been outstanding. He's approaching 3,000 yards on the year just through those 9 games. Has 23 touchdowns on the year. Jalen Cropper's receivers also. I think he's tied for second now in the country with touchdown receptions. I believe I want to say it's 9 or 10. So he's doing a fantastic job. So good luck stopping that duo. They're going to put up some points. Total's actually at 60. So this will be interesting to monitor that as well if you want to take a flyer and double up this bet here. But I will take Fresno State -5. Could see them winning this game by at least 7 to 10 points. They are at home. And again, Boise State, a little too inconsistent for my liking. That's why they're a 500 football team. So give me Fresno State -5 over Boise State. All right, quick recap. We have Ohio State -14.5 on the road at Nebraska. Liberty +9.5 at Ole Miss. Auburn +4.5 at Texas A&M. NC State -2.5 at Florida State. And as I just mentioned, Fresno State at home -5 over Boise State. That's our 5-pack of picks this week. 29-16 on the season. It's going to be a very interesting game. And as I mentioned before in the last segment, bonus pick here. It's not on my list, but I would not. I wouldn't say steer clear of the Rutgers-Wisconsin game. I'm not just saying that. Interesting game. The fact that they're a 2-touchdown dog at home. They're bound. I really think they are going to keep this close, and that total is just, it's begging you. Take the over, and I'd say if you're going to take anything, maybe at least take the over. 37.5. Take the over as Rutgers host Wisconsin today at 3:30 in Piscataway. Again, they don't play Wisconsin well, but if you think there's going to be less than 40 points scored total in this game, I just don't think that's going to happen. There's bound to be more points in this game. There just has to be. There has to be more points. Has to be. Rutgers is not that awful of an offense. They can score a little bit. I know it was Illinois and they only put up 20 last week, but the team can run the football. And when Vedral actually can throw, he can throw when he gets time, of course. But we'll see what happens. All right. That'll do it for me. We'll see you next week. Of course, same time, 8 to 9 a.m. next Saturday as we hit into week 11. Into the middle of November next week. But enjoy the games today, folks. Hopefully I win you a lot of money today. You've been listening to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.